All right, UPSC aspirants ready for a deep dive on something you'll probably see on those exams. India might be changing its nuclear liability laws, and that's kind of a big deal. I mean, we're talking energy security, international relations, even economic development, all stuff you got to know, and lucky for you, we're breaking it all down today. Our source is this article from The Hindu. We'll unpack all the details so you can crush any question they throw at you.
Absolutely spot on. This isn't just some random legal mumbo jumbo. We're talking a potential game changer for India's nuclear scene and their global standing.
You got that right.
Yeah.
So to get why this amendment is so important, we got to look at where India is right now with nuclear energy.
Right. So right now, India's got about 6,780 milli of nuclear power from 22 reactors. And get this, only Russia's Rosatom is running nuclear plants in India right now. But hold on, India's got this crazy goal, 100 gigawatt of nuclear power by 2047. It's right there in the 2025 budget.
Whoa, 100 gigawatt by 2047. That's a huge jump.
Yeah.
How does that even work with this whole debate about changing India's nuclear liability laws?
Okay, so that's where things get spicy. To hit that 100 gigawatt goal, they'll need tons of investment and tech help, especially from foreign companies. But there's this big roadblock, the Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act, the CLNDA from back in 2010.
Ah, the CLNDA, good old UPSC favorite. Can you give a quick breakdown on that and why it's causing such a fuss?
Sure, the CLNDA basically says who's responsible if there's a nuclear accident. The problem is it puts the blame on suppliers, which is different from what most countries do. Most countries follow the Convention on Supplementary Compensation for Nuclear Damage, or CSC for short, and that says the operator's responsible. See the difference? That's why a lot of foreign companies are hesitant to invest in India's nuclear stuff. They don't want to be on the hook for accidents that aren't their fault.
So it's like India's law is clashing with global standards, making it tough to attract foreign investment in nuclear.
Exactly. And because of this, some major projects have been stuck for ages, like the French company EDF. They want to build 6 EPR reactors in Maharashtra. And Westinghouse, they've got this proposal for 6 AP1000 reactors in Andhra Pradesh. These are big deals that could seriously boost India's nuclear power, but they're just sitting there because of this liability thing.
I see. So the CLNDA has created this stalemate that foreign companies are scared to invest because of the liability clause. But India needs their expertise in tech to hit those ambitious energy goals.
Exactly. And to make things even more interesting, India is also looking at small modular reactors, or SMRs. It's this cutting-edge tech that's gaining traction all over the world. SMRs, they're smaller, more adaptable, and potentially safer than the usual reactors. It's a promising way to expand nuclear energy capacity.
This adds a whole new angle to the discussion. India's not just trying to build more old-school reactors. They want to be leaders in SMR technology.
Yeah.
The stakes are even higher now.
Absolutely. If India can tweak the CLNDA and get in line with global standards, it could unlock a flood of foreign investment and tech collaboration, not just for regular reactors, but for this cool SMR tech too. It's a golden opportunity for India to lock in its energy future and be a leader in global nuclear energy.
So that brings up a crucial question. Why is India thinking about this amendment now after years of sticking to its guns on the CLNDA? What's changed?
That's the million-dollar question, and the answer is pretty complex. It touches on a bunch of things that are super relevant for UPSC folks. Let's break it down.
Okay, I'm ready. This is where the real analysis comes in, the kind of stuff that'll help you nail those exam questions.
Exactly. First off, changing the CLNDO could be a smart move to pull in foreign companies like EDF and Westinghouse, get those stalled projects moving again. It'd be a big boost for India's clean energy goals and help them fight climate change.
So India's weighing their domestic law against the benefits of foreign investment and expertise in the nuclear sector.
Exactly. It's not just about making foreign companies happy, though. It's about showing that India is a responsible global player, open to working with others and sticking to international rules.
That makes sense. Matching up with global standards would definitely boost India's image and how seriously people take them on stuff like nuclear non-proliferation and the peaceful use of nuclear energy. It's like saying India is ready to play by the rules on the world stage.
Exactly. But it's more than just talking the talk. This potential change also opens up chances for India to get tech transfer and skills development.
So it's a strategic play with multiple layers. Attract investment boost, clean energy, improve global image, and get valuable tech and skills. Sounds like a win-win for India.
From the outside, it does. But just like any complicated policy decision, there are potential hurdles and downsides to think about. And that's what we'll dive into next.
All right, so it seems like amending the CLNDA could open up a bunch of doors for India. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. What are some of the roadblocks or problems they might hit if they go through with this change? This is where that critical thinking comes in, looking at things from different angles.
Yeah, you're right. Remember, the CLNDA wasn't just thrown together. It was passed after tons of debate in Parliament and among the public. So if people think they're weakening the supplier liability, there could be some serious pushback, especially from opposition parties and groups who think it's putting foreign interests ahead of India's own concerns.
So there could be a lot of political opposition within India itself. It's a reminder that even technical legal stuff can get super political, especially when it's about sensitive things like nuclear safety and who's responsible.
Exactly. And to add to that, the proposed changes aren't very clear. The Ministry of External Affairs hasn't really said what they're planning, which creates uncertainty and could lead to legal challenges later on.
Yeah, that lack of transparency could make people hesitant both in India and among foreign investors. They need to know exactly what the rules are before they put big money into India's nuclear stuff.
Exactly. And let's not forget about investor confidence. India tried to deal with these liability worries back in 2019. They created a 1,500 crore insurance pool, but it didn't really attract a ton of investors. So they'll need a stronger, more convincing plan this time to make sure both international companies and Indian operators feel good about the legal protections and how compensation will work.
So it's like India's walking a tightrope here. Trina, balance what foreign companies want with what people in India are worried about and making sure there are enough safeguards to deal with the risks of nuclear energy.
You got it. It's a complicated situation with a lot of moving pieces. But that's what makes it such a great topic for UPSC folks. It makes you think critically, weigh the pros and cons, look at things from different sides, and understand how domestic politics, economics, and international relations all play together.
Absolutely. That kind of deep understanding is what helps you ace those UPSC exams. So listen up, folks. This is a prime example of how things like energy policy, nuclear tech, international law, and geopolitics are all connected.
I couldn't agree more. And that leads us to a really important point, the potential global ripple effects of India's nuclear goals. It's not just about India, it has regional and global implications we need to unpack.
Right, we can't talk about India's nuclear policy without thinking about the region, the reactions of their neighbors, and what's going on globally.
Exactly. And for India, those regional dynamics are tricky, especially with Pakistan and China. Both have nuclear weapons and their own strategic interests and things they're worried about.
So how could India's potential changes to the CLNDA and their bigger nuclear goals affect the regional geopolitical situation? What kind of reactions could we see from Pakistan and China?
That's a big question, and one that often gets ignored when people talk about India's nuclear energy policy. Remember, India's nuclear program has always been a sensitive issue in the region, especially with Pakistan. If India ramps up its nuclear capacity and partners more closely with countries like the US and France, it's going to raise some eyebrows in Islamabad.
Pakistan might see this as a change in the balance of power in the region, and they might feel like they need to do something to keep up. Could this make tensions worse or even lead to a regional arms race?
It's definitely a possibility that policymakers need to think about and try to prevent. India's going to need to be diplomatic and reassure Pakistan that their nuclear program is only for peaceful purposes and not a threat.
And what about China? How would Beijing react to India getting stronger in nuclear and potentially working more closely with the US and France on nuclear energy?
China's already a major player in the nuclear world, and they're expanding their own nuclear stuff. It's unlikely they'll just sit back and watch India get stronger. Beijing might see this as a challenge to their power in the region and a potential team-up between India, the US, and France that could hurt China's interests.
So we could see a whole bunch of actions and reactions like a geopolitical chess match as these major powers adjust their strategies based on what India does with nuclear. It's a reminder that India's actions have consequences beyond their own borders and could reshape the regional security landscape.
Exactly. And for UPSC aspirants, this is a key takeaway. To really understand India's foreign policy, especially in areas like nuclear energy, you need to look at everything. The domestic political stuff, the economic factors, the tech advancements, the regional situation, and what's going on globally.
It's about connecting the dots, seeing the big picture, and understanding how all these different pieces fit together to shape how countries interact.
Exactly. And that's what makes preparing for the UPSC exams so tough, but also rewarding. It forces you to really understand the world, think critically, and analyze complicated things from different perspectives.
We've covered a lot from the details of India's nuclear liability laws to how India's nuclear goals might affect the world. But there's one more thing to talk about that's especially relevant for UPSC folks, the global implications.
You're right. It's not just about energy security or influence in the region for India. They also want to help shape global rules and have a bigger role in international institutions, especially those dealing with nuclear stuff.
Okay, let's get into that. How does this potential change to the CLNDA and India's push for more nuclear energy connect to their goals in the world stage and their desire to have a bigger say in how things work?
That's where things get really interesting, and it's a topic that's perfect for those essay questions in the UPSC mains exam. India has always wanted to be seen as a responsible nuclear power, one that deserves a permanent seat on the UN Security Council and more influence in global decision-making.
So it's not just about following the rules, it's about helping create them. It's about moving from the audience to the stage when it comes to making decisions about nuclear stuff globally.
Exactly. And a stronger nuclear energy sector could help them get there. By showing they're committed to international rules, expanding their tech capabilities, and working closely with important global players, India can boost their reputation and make a stronger case for a bigger role in groups like the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA.
So changing the CLNDA isn't just about getting foreign investment or making more energy at home. It's also about showing that India is a responsible and capable nuclear power, ready to help manage global nuclear stuff and shape the future of nuclear energy.
Precisely. And this brings up some interesting questions about how India's growing influence in the nuclear world might affect their relationships with other powerful countries.
This is where the geopolitical chess game gets even more complex, right?
Absolutely. For example, working more closely with the US and France on nuclear energy could cause some tension with Russia, who's traditionally been India's main partner in this area.
It seems like India has to be really careful trying to build strong partnerships without upsetting any of the major players globally.
Exactly. It's a classic example of how tricky things are in a multipolar world where India has to manage their relationships with different powers who all have their own goals and plans.
And for UPSC folks, this is important. To understand India's foreign policy, especially when it comes to touchy subjects like nuclear energy, you need to understand this complex web of relationships, rivalries, and changing alliances that make up the international system today.
Absolutely. It's not just about memorizing facts and numbers. It's about really understanding how all these pieces fit together, how decisions made in India affect what's happening globally, and how India is trying to position themselves in this constantly changing world.
Okay, so we've gone deep on India's nuclear ambitions and what could happen if they change the CLNDA. We've talked about challenges at home, economic stuff, regional security, and how this all plays globally. But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners, especially those UPSC folks, with something to really think about.
I'm all ears. What's the big question that'll keep our future diplomats and policymakers thinking?
Okay, imagine India changes the CLNDA,
Yeah.
gets those big foreign investments, and really kicks off a new wave of nuclear energy. What kind of long-term impact could this have on India's role in managing nuclear stuff globally? Could they use their bigger nuclear capacity to have more say in the rules and regulations? And how might that affect their relationship with other nuclear powers like Russia and China?
Now, that's a question that deserves its own deep dive. You see, having more nuclear power isn't just about energy or technology, it's also about influence and power on the world stage. India's always wanted a bigger role in international organizations, especially those focused on nuclear stuff. More nuclear energy could help them achieve that.
So it's not just about following the rules, it's about helping make them. It's
Yeah.
about going from the back of the room to the head of the table when it comes to nuclear decisions globally.
Exactly. And that shift could really change how India interacts with other nuclear powers. For example, getting closer to the US and France on nuclear energy might cause some tension with Russia, since they've been India's main partner in this area. But then again, it might push Russia to work more with India so they don't lose their influence.
Sounds like India has to be really strategic here. They need to build partnerships carefully and keep things balanced so they don't upset any of the major players.
Absolutely. It's a high-stakes game with no easy answers, but that's what makes it so interesting to analyze. And for those preparing for the UPSC, this is a perfect case study to use those critical thinking skills, assess the risks and rewards, and come up with strong arguments that show you understand India's goals and how tricky global nuclear governance is.
Well said. This deep dive has been amazing. It shows how something technical like nuclear liability laws can have a huge impact on India's energy, their relationships in the region, and their goals on the world stage. We've talked about the good and the bad, the challenges at home, the opportunities abroad, and the complex relationships India has to manage as a nuclear power.
And remember, this is just the beginning. We encourage everyone to dig deeper into this, explore different viewpoints, and come up with their own informed opinions. After all, thinking critically and independently is what makes a successful UPSC candidate.
Absolutely. Don't just take our word for it. Go read that article from the Hindu. Do your own research and talk about it with others. And hey, while you're at it, why not share your thoughts with us in the comments below? We'd love to hear what you think and keep this conversation going.
We're all learning together, and your ideas might help someone else figure out a tough UPSC question.
So to all our dedicated UPSC aspirants out there, keep those minds sharp, stay curious, and aim high. The world is a complex and fascinating place, and the more you learn about it, the better you'll be able to handle its challenges and take advantage of its opportunities.
And remember, in international relations, there are no simple answers, only well-informed choices.
That's it for the deep dive. Keep studying, and good luck on your UPSC journey. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our future deep dives into the most important topics for your UPSC preparation.